Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Henri, and I want to talk about the future of electronics for a little bit. You see, a lot of the devices that we operate from a day-to-day basis is based on semiconductors, um, a network of semiconductor materials, and things like that. And semiconductors have their limitations. Although there's a lot of advancements in the nanotechnology department, quote end quote. There is limitations on such devices, and that is due to the energy band gap and things like that of the of the semiconductor properties. And within the range of about 50 megahertz on up is when semiconductor materials begin to decrease significantly in efficiency. And so when you try to, or when you attempt to put semiconductor devices within that operating environment, the heat dissipation begins to increase quite dramatically, and you need a lot of heat sinks and a lot of engineering and implementation, a lot of parts and components and things like that to keep everything running. Everything starts to get bulky, and that's not really what we're aiming for. But nonetheless, I say the future is beginning to lean, or beginning to move towards semiconductor-free electronics, and so transistors and different kinds of optical switching devices is in for how do you say it? We're we're taking a look at it. It's being looked at, or reviewed, or experimented with, or however you want to say it. But that's the future of electronics right there. If I couldn't tell you any sooner, but yeah, that's what we're in a ride for. I don't know how to say this right. My brain's going everywhere. But yeah, remember that 50 megahertz. 50 megahertz semiconductor electronics can't handle that as well as semiconductor-free electronics, such as vacuum tube technology. You know, some people call them there's a funny name. It kind of cracks me up. People call them fire bottles. Yeah, that's what it was. Okay, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Those work quite well within that frequency, and in fact, the only reason why vacuum tube technology still exists is due to that very reason. Radio stations, for example, is one really good application of vacuum tubes, where the efficiency works quite well above that 50 megahertz range. You see, when you're working with radio waves and things like that, you're you're exceeding that 50 megahertz frequency quite well, if you want to put it that way. And another good application of it is guitar amplifiers. Things like, especially if you're a musician, like if you're a fellow musician, you know, you may, or the majority of the population of musicians tend to lean toward the warm sound, or warm how do you say it, warm warm tone, warm feel, warm timbre, soft timbre of vacuum tubes, vacuum tube audio electronics. But yeah, one of the other good things about vacuum tube technology. But I was gonna say that vacuum improving vacuum tube technology is a really good way of seeing the future. So if we're gonna surpass supposedly surpass Moore's law, as you might be familiar with, uh, that's that's the direction we need to head towards, improving vacuum tube technology. Because as we see these fire bottles, as people call them, they're not as efficient as we like them to be, simply because they require high voltages and heating grid components inside the tube, and they wear out over quite some time. But if they're maintained well, and everything's cared for in the right way, then vacuum tubes can last quite long. But nonetheless, they dissipate heat quite a bit, and so if we're going to be looking at an advancement of future electrical technology, electronic technology, and components, things like that, that's what we're that's what we're going to see. So I'm just waiting. Just wanted to talk about that for a little bit. All right, nice talking with you this evening. Cheerio.